Hey everyone, Brandon here, Sock Up Monkey Garage, and as I'm sure you can tell by the thumbnail, I'm kind of at a crossroads. It's decision time. The last final moments of this journey to getting my Dodge Charger Daytona delivered has finally come. And in fact, before I get to the topic at hand, I did want to provide an update. My car has arrived. In fact, just yesterday, I received this message from my sales advisor at Crown with this photo of my Scat Pack in triple nickel, fresh off the truck. Clearly, it's got some transit filth on it, but man, I don't know what. Something about that color, that car, the way it just shows off those body lines. I might be biased, but I think it's the best color you can currently get on this thing. Now, maybe if they come out with Plum Crazy at some point, then we might be talking. But I just wanted to share that. We are clearly just days away. They need some time to, I think, run some updates as they're having to do with all of these, get it cleaned up. I've got to work out some personal financial stuff I'm in the middle of that's really kind of holding up signing on this deal. We're actually kind of in the middle of a mortgage refinance and cannot do anything such as acquiring a new car until we get the clear to close, which should be any day now. And it's the whole timing of this is quite honestly why I wanted this moment to have occurred last year. And then I could have moved into the phase of working through our mortgage refinance. But alas, this is where we're at. But anyway, I still need to make a decision on whether or not I'm actually going to lease this car. And as part of that process, what I've been doing, and I've been doing this kind of in the background the whole time. Maybe if you've watched my other videos or you have been participating in the comments, this shouldn't be news to you, especially if you watched all the way through my last video. And there are a number of cars that have been in contention for that space in my garage. And I've narrowed it down to two, but I thought I'd at least kind of give you some insights into the process and what I've been going through, share some of the other cars I considered, and kind of walk you through my thought process and where I'm at by the end of this video. So stick with me and let's get started. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's get right to it. I do want to say, though, before we begin, if you could go down there and hit that subscribe button, it would mean a lot. I noticed there's a lot of you who are new here. I believe TK's Garage might have given me a shout out in one of his recent videos. OC Motivator did a couple weeks back. And if you are here, thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. If you could subscribe, I think what you'll see is what I have to share and what I have to offer is pretty engaging. And hopefully you enjoy this and you'll come back and watch more. But for those of you who have come over from the other channels and those of you who have been here all along, I do thank you. But I think you'll find this particular conversation enlightening. I wanted to kind of share another peek behind the scenes. I know a lot of my videos kind of convey this sense that I'm dead set on this car, and that honestly hasn't been the case. This entire process has been about what speaks to me right now, what's within this general $80,000 to $90,000 price range, and what will fit in that garage space I just cleared out last week. And while I may not have given a lot of details in my previous videos about this sort of behind the scenes internal dialogue in my mind going on, you know, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? I have kind of given some hints about that in the comments if you've been participating in those in some of my past videos. And so what I thought I would do is I would just jump right in, kind of walk you through where I've been going in this thought process and where I am at this moment right now, and why I feel like this is the moment to make a decision, especially with the car now arriving, especially with everything else I have kind of in play going on financially. I need to make a move and I need to make it very soon. So here we have right up on the screen now the 4 cars that made my final list, and I get it. This list isn't comprehensive. This also isn't a discussion around that car's better than that car, just from a pure stats or metrics on a piece of paper sort of perspective. This is more about what's new, what's unique, what excites me and what I think would be interesting for all of you to join me on that journey of owning and experiencing and maybe modifying the ups and the downs that may come with that, as we've all experienced when we buy a car. You know, you get that honeymoon period and then you kind of just sort of level out and it becomes the norm. And then at some point you start to get that itch and you start to look around. And that's kind of what I want to take you on, because that has been my experience with cars my entire life. But here you'll see the 4. There was a 5th option that quite honestly did not spend a great deal of time on my list, and that was the Nissan Z Nismo. And again, it fell within this price range. Quite honestly, it was on the lower end, which made it very attractive. But what really caused it to fall off my list rather quickly is the fact that you can only get that car, at least that Nismo edition, in an automatic transmission. And quite honestly, if I'm going to go with the petrol-powered power plant on a car, it's got to be a manual, especially if it's a 2-seater sports coupe. I just feel that the automatic I've had, in fact, I've had one of these BMWs in the past with the ZF8 automatic transmission, and they're glorious. Don't get me wrong, they're incredible transmissions, very quick, shifting much faster than I can. But there's just something about that engagement, that I got with the past few Mazda MX-5s and 124 Spyders built off the same Mazda Indy platform, that just has me kind of aching for that level of engagement, but with something with a little bit more power, a little more excitement than a Miata. No dig on the Miata at all. Love them. I've had 6 of them. Can't really complain too much, except for just a lack of power on them. So anyway, so the Nismo fell off pretty quickly, but what we ended up here with is obviously the Charger, obviously the BMW Z4. I've mentioned it before. I teased it in the end of my last video. If you watched all the way through, I know all of you aren't, but it'd be great if you could. I hide little things in the second half of my videos that you miss if you don't watch all the way through. The Hyundai Ioniq 5N, I think, obviously is a more direct competitor to the Dodge Charger Daytona, and often is compared directly to it when you watch first impression or first drive videos. And clearly the Porsche 718 Cayman, the variant, the GTS 4.0 variant with the flat 6 in a manual transmission, is obviously more of a direct competitor to the BMW Z4 M40i. So that's where I ended up. Now, as far as why the Porsche, why the Ioniq 5 fell off the list, let's address the Ioniq 5N here. I'm a hot hatch lover. Don't get me wrong. I had an '88 Volkswagen GTI 16 valve that I absolutely adored. It was one of the first cars I had, in high school going into college. Loved it so much. I cornered a little hard, hit a curb, and flipped it over, and that was the end of that story. But I don't know if the hot hatch, especially a 4-door, what's really a compact SUV in hot hatch form, really speaks to me. And it's a compelling car given what Hyundai's been able to do with it. I just don't think it's the car for me right now. It doesn't quite have the look that stands out, at least from my perspective, that I'm going for. No dig on the car. If I could have an opportunity to have one for a period of time, I wouldn't pass it up. Porsche's, on the other hand, completely different car, but when you compare it to the BMW, you're talking easily $20,000 to $30,000 to $40,000 more. And I've been watching, I've got a saved search that pops up and alerts me when there are certified pre-owned 718 Caymans that meet my configuration requirements, and they typically come in at $95,000 to $105,000. And just doing the math, I just had a hard time kind of stepping up into that price point at this moment in time. And that's how we ended up with the BMW Z4 and the Charger Daytona as being my final 2 options, and that I'm split between in these final moments of this journey making a decision about. And I do want to say, for complete transparency, I have previously owned a 2020 BMW Z4 in the G29, on the G29 platform, and absolutely loved that car. Again, the only thing that I felt it was lacking and missing was that complete full engagement that would come from a manual transmission. But good news. They have had 5 years to tweak and perfect that car. And you know what? Honestly, before I get into it now, let's just go through the configurators from each manufacturer. Let's look at the stats on both of these cars, and then let's hear what other auto YouTubers, other reviewers have said about each. And maybe that'll just kind of help you understand where my mind's been at, what's the process that I use. You know, this is something that I rinse and repeat through every car that I consider buying or leasing. It was a process I went through on every car you saw in my garage clear out video. And I just thought you might find this interesting to come along with me and a peek inside my mind, which might be a scary place. But anyway, let's start with the BMW. So here I am on BMW USA's website, and this is the configurator for the Z4 M40i. I will say I am very, very interested in the Thunder Night Metallic. I have a thing for purple, and I have a thing for purple cars ever since as a child. I saw a plum crazy, I think it was a 71 Challenger. It was definitely an old school Mopar Challenger in plum crazy, and I just thought that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And ever since then, I've always wanted to own a purple car. I would love to have a purple Cuda, but I did briefly in the 2010s own a Scion XB. They had one of their special editions that was in a purple called Murasaki. And while it was gorgeous, that car in particular, quite honestly, was much of a letdown, very much of a letdown, very loud, drove and rode horribly, and I had to get rid of it. But anyway, enough about that. So here, if we choose a Thunder Night Metallic and we move on to the roof, I think I would just simply go with the standard black soft top. On the wheels, I'm very particular about my wheels. I don't know if any of you are, but I do find these wheels here, and what happens when I go to select them is these are special wheels. This configuration of wheels, it's a staggered setup. So it's not only just a different width on the front and rear, but it's actually a different diameter. So it's 19s on the front, 20s on the rear. And that particular wheel configuration is only available as part of this HandSchalter package, this edition HandSchalter package, which HandSchalter is essentially German for like handshake or handshift. And so that $3,500 package adds several different required options. One of them are those wheels. So to get those wheels, I have to go with the HandSchalter, which includes the manual. Obviously, like I said earlier, that's something I want to do. I just think those look really good. I had these exact same wheels, but in this color here. It'll switch over here. These are the wheels I had on my 2020. I like that configuration. It's almost kind of like a tuning fork configuration. But I think with the purple, I think the gloss black is the way to go. When it comes to upholstery, as you can see, here is the cognac. I had the cognac on my 2020, which was in, I want to say, it was in a blue. I can't remember the name of that blue for the 2020 model. It might come back to me. But I thought the cognac played off the blue very, very well. However, for purple, I think you either have to go with black or with white. And I kind of like the look of this white, to be quite honest with you, especially the contrasting here in the door and on the armrest. I just think it looks rather sharp, very striking. And I think against that purple, I believe it would look quite nice. So with that, then, we have to select the high gloss, which I'll be honest with you, I am never a fan of shiny black plastic inside a car. It fingerprints terribly, it scratches easily, it attracts and shows dust off like mad. We're talking, this is a drop top BMW, which is going to then suck in all that dust and dirt as you drive through, you know, the roads here in Tennessee, up in the mountains, all the pollen that's in the air all the time. And it just collects and sticks, and it's not my favorite. I actually was more of a fan of this aluminum Tetragon that I had in my 2020. But unfortunately, the HandSchalter edition requires their shadow line, which is their way of saying blacked out or murdered out trim. And then I think, in fact, it pushes you into their extended shadow line. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that because they knew they would move a lower volume of these, which surprisingly, come to find out, buyers are now opting for the manual version over the ZF8 automatic. I think it's 65% of the time. But I think they just forced you into this black because they didn't want to have to make many different versions of the opening for the gear shift. And so they've relegated you to just the black. But anyway, nothing I can do about that. Obviously, I need the driving assistant package. As you can see here, this is this HandSchalter package. And then I can't have a BMW without the premium package, which adds a ton of features that I feel are necessary, like the heads-up display, park distance control. Can't have adaptive cruise control with the automatic transmission. There is the ambient light package. Let's add wireless charging. Always a nice feature. Gotta upgrade that sound system. And I think that's really it. So when we get to the end, you're looking at about $75,000 for this beautiful purple car. And I'm not going to lie, that's pretty tempting when you consider jumping over to the Dodge Charger. And we're starting off at $78,500. We're already $3,000 more. And clearly these aren't cars that are intended to be pitted against one another or compared. But hey, this is my world. This is the world I'm living in, and this is the decision I'm making, like it or not. So obviously I'm going to go with one in triple nickel. We're going to get the sun and sound package, which adds that full pano glass roof with the upgraded stereo system. I believe if we go back and look here, yep, mine have those black wheels, which I believe then drops me into the carbon and suede package. Yep. So it added that. We've got the track pack added. It's got this drive experience recorder, which all that is, it's an extra set of cameras or one camera that's mounted up underneath and behind the rear view mirror. And if you have the right kind of configured USB thumb drive inserted into the port in the center console, it will record, kind of like Teslas have the ability to record all the cameras around. But then you can overlay performance metrics, a track map, all that sort of stuff. Do I feel it's worth $1,000? I don't know, but Dodge does. So I guess I'm paying for it. And then obviously the Plus group, which is a requirement on all 2024 models with the black interior. So with all that said and done, we come to a grand total of $85,965. Quite a price tag there, Dodge. Quite a price tag. Now, I will say, and I'm not going to share any details around what I will ultimately pay for mine, but it won't be that. And in fact, the deal I've been able to negotiate with Crown does actually put the out-the-door price on my unit well below $75,000 that we have here on the BMW. So pricing now really isn't a factor. So let's look at stats. Let's kind of see here. Let's go down to the car comparisons again. If we look at performance, which again, these cars aren't really intended to be pitted against one another. And given the automatic transmission in the BMW, clearly it's going to be slower. I want to say the automatic, the ZF version here is at 3.9 seconds, 0 to 60. That I think bumps up to 4.1 if you're shifting manually. But clearly the Charger has a stated 0 to 60 time of 3.3 seconds. But I mean, what are we really talking here with under a second difference? Am I going to be able to experience that? Is it really going to be all that meaningful? How often do I scream from a full stop to 60 miles an hour? How often do you do that? So again, I'm not really too sure, if there's much value in comparing that. And I think one of the things as you watch, and as my channel grows and I get the opportunity to bring in more cars, experience more cars, you'll see that numbers and stats, they're important, and I think they play a role in making decisions like these, and everyone has a different take on that. But what you're going to learn about me is I go off of how something makes me feel. What does it invoke? What do I feel? Like when I look at that car right now, I see a mean, aggressive little mini German muscle car. I know it's a sports coupe. I know technically it's a roadster, but it's got more power than it needs. It's delivering it to the rear wheels, and it does it with a lot of fun. That to me is a muscle car. I think the Dodge Charger is a muscle car. It's got more power than it needs for a car its size, and it delivers it in a fun and exciting package. So in a way, these cars do, from my perspective, fit that definition. But when we look at the car and driver stats here on the BMW, we already talked price range. They do say, that you have powerful engine choices and a premium cabin. And they do say from a Lowe's perspective that, there are rival sports cars like the 718, let's just call it what it is, that, offer sharper handling. Again, I've driven both. I'm not going to argue with the fact that the Porsche is more of a finely tuned precision, if I can say the word, instrument. But that's not really what I'm necessarily going for. I'm not looking to do, remote scalpel surgery with this thing. I'm looking for something that I can enjoy every day, that my wife can get in and out of easily. That's always a factor I have to consider in everything with her condition. And this car has already proven itself, since I've owned one before, as being something that we can both enjoy. So as we go through here, let's look and see. I think down they always kind of include some specifications. So real quick, length 170.1 and a width of 73.4. We'll compare that here in a second to the Charger, especially when we're talking about fitting in my garage. Fuel efficiency, an observed 19 miles per gallon. Obviously, this is a petrol-powered car. Let's jump over to the Charger. They do say when it comes to the Charger, the highs are big muscle car power. It's surprisingly agile for, I guess, its size and weight. And clearly, there's a ton of cargo space that I would gain versus the very limited cargo space that is in the Z4. Though I can say for a fact that I do know you can fit a wheelchair in the back of this car, and that's always an important factor for us when we are looking at new vehicles. Lowe's limited range features. Limited range figures. Yeah, I think what we're really going to be looking at is if you drive this thing like a muscle car and you use that power shot button often, you're looking more at like a sub 200 mile range. And again, I'm not looking for a range queen. I have the EV9. I've already proven it can go on road trips, and it's an excellent car for taking long distance, even into regions with poor EV infrastructure. That's not what this is about for me. And let's get down here to the stats so we can kind of compare them side by side. Where's that wheelbase? The length. 206.6 inches. That is significantly more than the Z4 by a mile. And the width here is 79.8, which is close to the width of the Z4. Really at this point that I think about it, when it comes to width, we're not just talking getting it in through the garage door. I'm going to have to be able to open the door and get out of that thing. Probably something I should check later on. Anyway, so that's really it. That's kind of the process I follow. I do a ton of research. I go to other sites. I'm just trying to provide an abbreviated version here so that I don't put all of you to sleep. But I think now would be a good point to kind of hand it over to some of the automotive reviewers and YouTubers that I enjoy watching and whose reviews I've kind of grown to trust and feel like align with the way that I look at cars. So let's start with the BMW here. Let's just hear what the guys at Straight Pipes have to say about it.
Are going for a drive.
2025 BMW Z4.
Manual transmission, no launch control.
Yeah, baby.
I think it sounds mean. It sounded so good on the back roads.
Oh, yeah.
She's a ripper.
Horsepower and torque.
382 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque from a 3-liter turbo inline 6-cylinder B58 engine.
And we got the manual. Finally, they introduced one for this Gen of Z4.
So there's their take on the Z4. Let's hear what they had to say about the Charger Daytona.
I'm Jacob.
I'm Yuri.
And we're going for a drive.
Obviously, just a completely different experience, a completely different car. And I think getting behind the wheel of the BMW versus the Charger is going to kind of encourage different behavior. They're clearly targeted at different audiences. And I don't know, are you like me? Do you have this kind of dichotomy inside your head when it comes to cars? Do you just go after all the same type of car? Or are you like me and you need to scratch different itches when it comes to cars and you like to kind of have a variety of different types of vehicles that do different things? Let me know down in the comments. Hit that subscribe button while you're there.
Dodge Charger Daytona Scat Pack.
With Fratsonic exhaust and launch control. Okay.
That was pretty all right.
Interesting.
Horsepower and torque.
Up to 670 horsepower and 627 pound-feet of torque from 2 electric motors and a 93.9 kilowatt-hour battery.
But most importantly, let's listen to it
From the outside.
I really like those guys. I enjoy watching all their videos. Shout out to them. If you're watching, thanks for inspiring me and thanks for sharing your candid thoughts on these cars. And speaking of candid thoughts, it wouldn't really be a fair video if I didn't have, some of the more critical feedback from reviewers, and no car is perfect. I think I've said that so many times in the comments. Everyone sort of kind of expects Dodge to come out with this like first generation Charger EV and it be absolutely perfect day one. And Dodge has never done that. I have owned so many first gen Dodges, it's not even funny, or Chrysler products, period. My family owned the first Dodge Caravan minivan, and that thing was incredible for what it was. It was innovative for the time, but it was far from perfect. It got better over the years, and it's still here today. And if you had looked at what it was back then compared to what it is now, you'd be like, holy crap, that thing's a heap of junk. And so I think it's really unfair to kind of take that approach. That being said, the same thing applies to the Z4. The Z4 in its original form, the G29 version in 2020, I had mine in late 2019. It's not the same car that they're selling with this HandSchalter edition. They've had time to tweak and improve and perfect that platform as best they can in its final years. And I think they're actually going to stop making them in 2026, which is another variable I have to consider. This might be my last chance to really get one at an affordable price. I think these cars are slept on. I think the Z4 is underappreciated, underrecognized. And I think at some point, much like other past Z models, it will explode in collectability and value much later on. So with that, let's jump over here. Let's just go straight to one of the common complaints about the BMW, and that is steering feel. And let's hear that from Everyday Driver. They did a great job of summarizing it.
This still has the very aggressive turn-in of all modern BMWs, but as far as any texture or awareness of the tires, that's still not here. This is essentially just a lever to direct the car, but it's not an information point.
I would agree with that.
Okay, time for a dig. It just holds. It's beautiful.
It sticks
But I'm not
to the
feeling
road.
the road. I'm not feeling the difference between the tire and the road.
It's a tool but there's no detail coming through at all. You have to get that from everywhere else in the car. Now, luckily, the car does give you a lot of information. You can feel it moving around from the seat. The weight is very well controlled.
The disconnect from the tire feeling does not mean this is bad to drive or it's not enjoyable. What's gone up is the speed. The control that you've got over the car, it's so precise. You can put this car anywhere on the road, just like you can the Miata.
But it never feels small, especially when you climb in this after the MX-5. There's no question that this is 50% or more greater car than that is. 3,600 pounds, I think we can agree, is a lot for a sports car.
Can't disagree with that. It's certainly not nearly 6,000 pounds as we have in the Charger. And speaking of the Charger, let's look and see. I think this is from Rich Rebuilds. I think this was a moment later on in his review where they were doing some like rolling launches on the highway. I don't know. Let's just jump to it.
You're going 55 right now, 50. We're going speed limit, don't complain. Ready? Ready, go for it. How'd that feel, Joey? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a, oh, look, the Tesla's like, this is the best we can do.
All right. We're gonna pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's...
Okay.
Go ahead.
I like the car.
Yep.
It's comfortable. It does better than you would expect it to.
Yeah, it does.
But I still feel it's not there. I hate to say it because like I like the interior.
Yep.
After like talking with the interior designer, he's very passionate. The exterior designer, they did a great job with a lot of things.
Yep.
But I feel kind of missed on a lot of things. You know.
I think it's a great 2018 car.
I think that kind of sums it up. And I can't necessarily dispute that. You know, I just did a quick first impression drive of one. I will do a deeper, more comprehensive test drive when I can get inside my very own. I, as a policy, don't go and hoon on brand new cars that I'm not going to own. I think that's just kind of a garbage way of being as a human being, to kind of thrash on a brand new car that's not broken in. And plus, it's something someone else is going to buy, and it could be their baby. It could be their pride and joy. So once I get into my own, that I will quite possibly potentially own, then you're going to see me be a little bit more aggressive. So look forward to that here in the coming days. But I do agree, going back to what I was saying, the car does feel like maybe it's a year or two late to the party, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And if it were 2020, 2022, 2023, I think the car would still be as good as it is to me today. I think as far as a first entry, a first attempt at something nobody else is doing, nobody else has got the balls to try this, I think it's good. And again, going back to the statement I made earlier, my 09 RT, which was technically the second variant released on the LC platform after a limited run of the SRT 8, it wasn't perfect. I had to do all sorts of stuff. A new Borla exhaust, a new adaptive lowering set of coilovers from KW, cold air intake, all sorts of things had to be done to that car to really kind of get it to a point that I felt this is a good car to drive. Same thing with my 13 SRT 8390 It wasn't perfect out of the box. So new platforms take time. Look at what those things became 10 years later. 10 years it took to get the Hellcats, to get the Demons. That's what Dodge does. They never launch. They never show up to the party revealing their hand and showing their best. What I will say is that unlike the LCs, which were already pushed beyond their limits by the time they put a two-door Challenger coupe on that platform, that car was already decades old and struggled. Up to this day, they still struggle to put all that power down and keep it on the ground. I laugh when I look at these Demon 170s. Yes, it's insane amounts of horsepower on 885, but you're never going to get all that to the ground effectively unless you're on a drag strip that's been treated, with an adhesion promoter to keep it there. And even then, something like the Lucid Air Sapphire with similar horsepower absolutely walks away from it. Walks away. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go out and watch Haggerty's video where they put those two up against one another, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, I'm not here to argue or debate that, and I'm not here to crap all over those cars. I had two myself. I had a 300S with the 5.7 liter Hemi, and loved and enjoyed those cars for what they were. I think it's just everyone needs to take a step back, needs to take a breath, and really look at this Charger, look at it and see, what are they intending it to be? And kind of, geez, give Dodge a break with this thing. They are trying. The conditions and the environment and the set of circumstances that resulted in that car right there coming into existence are unique. And for what it's worth, given all of what they were working against or working with, I think this is pretty damn good. But let's kind of wrap things up real quick before I give my final thoughts and hand your time and your life back to you. Let's just watch a couple of more comments from these reviewers, and then I'll share my final thoughts.
As a matter of fact, having a manual transmission, just the fact that it has a manual, makes this better than every other car according to the internet, right? We've saved the manuals, everyone. It's still here. You can buy one now. It's a cool manual with precision, and it's well engineered, and it's great to drive.
Such a good car.
With the manual transmission package, BMW gives you more than just the manual, however. They also revise the suspension. The suspension setup here is more aggressive than it is in the non-manual transmission versions. They're assuming you are a driver who wants to drive hard.
On the Z4 automatic, there was this heavy, distant thudding from the rear. The rear suspension didn't know really how to keep sorting out the bumps and the camber changes. It seemed really unrefined. And good news, it is completely refined only for this car. BMW has added auxiliary springs, front and rear, to cure that problem. And they've changed the rear suspension mapping. When you're in sport mode, this car is astounding to drive. It is so quick.
And then let's give the final word to Motor Trend here on the Charger.
Said, if you're not trying to smoke the tires and you just care about going fast, this thing's got the juice. I've got the powertrain in the most relaxed street mode. If I hit power shot and flatten the accelerator, holy hell, this thing goes. Dodge claims a quarter-mile time of 11.5 seconds for the $75,185 Scat.
That's decent.
And I actually ran in 11.47 seconds at 119.5 miles per hour on a drag strip.
Stock.
If
Out
you
of the
can
box.
reproduce those times in our testing on a street surface, the Daytona will easily walk every Hellcat Motor Trend has ever tested.
Did you hear that?
61,000.
All right, so where do I end up here? And I'm still on the fence. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to let fate decide. I think I would absolutely love and adore owning both of these cars. And since I tend to get tired of cars within a year or two anyway, it's not like I wouldn't have a chance to jump on the other, regardless of which way I go and kind of live through all of that ownership experience again. And hopefully you're still around and I can share it with you. But I think I'm also going to put it to a bit of a vote. So once again, why don't you go down in those comments, let me know, Charger or Z4, which would you want to see me buy? Which would you want to see me own? Which one do you think is going to be most entertaining? I have my thoughts on that, but yeah, I think I'll let fate decide. With this kind of convergence of personal finance stuff, it may be one of these things where the decision is made for me. And that's unfortunate, that Dodge couldn't get this car to me late last year as they had promised. I think we would be having a very different conversation right now, but that's what it is. And thanks for coming along and kind of peeking behind my eyes into my mind and kind of seeing the journey that I've gone from a what's my next car decision standpoint. And hopefully by this time next week, you'll have your answer. So stick with me. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and please come back because I really appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you next time. With that, goodbye.